Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, which is a globally recognised organisation that classifies the severity of food insecurity and malnutrition, has found that the three key thresholds for famine have been met in Gaza. And they have described the famine taking place in Gaza's largest city, Gaza City, as entirely man-made. Israel has rejected the findings of the report and has claimed there is no famine in Gaza, and the findings were based on Hamas lies laundered through organisations with vested interests. Well, we've all seen photographs of extremely thin and weak-looking children and also some adults in Gaza. Tom Gross is the international affairs commentator and human rights campaigner. He's joining us live from Tel Aviv this evening. Tom, we will have all seen Tom Fletcher, who was the UN official who said that 14,500 babies were going to die within 48 hours a while ago, something he had to walk back. He is now saying that Gaza City is in the grip of famine. Is he a trusted source when it comes to the famine in Gaza, do you think? I mean, I know obviously you come from the side, you live in Israel, you work in Israel, you're a commentator. So let's try and keep to the facts if we can here. Thanks, Tom Gross.
Yeah, good evening, Rachel. Of course, we want to keep to the facts. Well, what I can say is on May 20th, on an interview on BBC Today, Radio 4, the aforesaid official, and he's a senior official, is the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, working directly under the UN Secretary General. He said 14,000 babies would die within 48 hours. No babies died. So certainly he doesn't seem very reliable. But I want to push back on something you just said about photos. Yes, we have all seen the photos. There are in fact 10 different photos of children in horrible conditions. And all 10 have now been debunked. None of them have died or have, it's not because of hunger. The BBC about 3 days ago apologised for saying a baby died of hunger when it turned out that child had cancer. The New York Times walked back a doctored photo on its front page, but that photo also appeared on the front page of The Guardian and The Times, and The Guardian and Times have not walked them back. So let's not confuse two things. There is hardship in Gaza, for sure.
And starvation?
No,
and starvation?
Not at all. They're pockets of hunger, which Israel says are caused by Hamas deliberately withholding food. There is a mass of food in Gaza. It's not a problem of food, it's a problem of distribution. And
affordability, because Hamas does requisition the supplies and then sells them at their own prices, food is there, but it's not affordable.
Well, it's not affordable to lots of people in London either. I mean, yes, there's been inflation in Gaza. Look, I don't want to belittle the suffering there. There is undoubtedly suffering, but kind of highly exaggerated, or Israel would say completely fabricated claims by such an important body as the UN, declaring a famine that only ever declared famine 4 times in modern history. And right now, I spent last week in a conference with people from Sudan. In Sudan, there are 25 million people really at risk of starvation. So every time we on the media or aid agencies or the UN go on about Gaza, not only are they distorting and exaggerating, but they're also diverting attention from actual famines that are actually happening. Now, again, I don't want to belittle the situation in Gaza. It's a horrible conflict. Israel bears some blame, as does Hamas, but that's not an excuse for throwing around terms like genocide and starvation and all this stuff. It's complete misuse of language, and the UN should know better.
Well, Tom Fletcher, I think, used the word famine 20 times. Can we move on to the planned incursion into Gaza City, which, according to Israel Katz, will be raised if Hamas doesn't agree terms. Can you set out what's happening vis-a-vis Gaza City in terms of its status and security, as opposed to the fake famine there?
Sure. So Gaza City is the biggest city in Gaza. It has at present about 1 million people. About 650,000 are residents of Gaza, and about 300,000 are people who've moved there during the course of the war. So about 1 million people. Most of the city is still standing. Of those 300,000 are living in tents, which is what we see in the media, but the city itself is basically intact. There have been incursions in the past, but no big ground force. Israel says that it's Hamas's last stronghold. If this war, which has been dragging on too long, is ever going to end, there are only two ways of it happening. Hamas surrenders, steps aside, gives up power, or Israel goes in and beats Hamas militarily in Gaza City. Now, I'm not a military expert. There are people in Israel, including in the military, who say it's not a good idea to go into Gaza City, but others say, well, otherwise the war is going to go on forever. If you keep on having these stop-start situations, that's why it's been dragging on so long. And in the meantime, Israel quite quickly and decisively basically beat Hezbollah, the big militia in Lebanon. They had a 12-day war with Iran. I should point out, by the way, the Houthis in Yemen are still firing missiles. And about 20 minutes ago, I was in a bomb shelter. A ballistic missile fired at central Israel from Yemen was shot down by the missile defenses here. But look, it's a horrible war in Gaza. The people of Palestinians are suffering greatly. But, repeating Hamas propaganda, as so many international agencies, and I'm sorry to say the British Foreign Secretary and President Macron and Canadian and Australian politicians and much of the British media, is just keeping Hamas from stepping aside. They're never going to.
Yeah, that was going to ask you. Now that they've had the encouragement and recognition from several Western countries, they must be emboldened to think, why on earth would we give back the hostages? Why would we give up arms? Why would we step down? There is no incentive whatsoever.
It's the opposite. So Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, pointed out that Hamas were close to some kind of stepping down or whatever. And then President Macron went and recognized, followed by several other governments, Hamas are never going to beat the Israeli army militarily. They're too weak. But they can beat Israel by using the court of public opinion and UN agencies and so on to basically weaken Israel. And it's a horrible situation that the war should be dragged on for no really good reason.
Tom Gross, thank you very much indeed.